Well, we are less than a week away now from the much anticipated kickoff to the Paris 2024 Olympics, and of course, that will also include the dawn of the LeVengers, a pairing of some of the weakest-minded super-teaming scrubs who came to power in the 2010s and were, of course, incapable of winning anything without amassing jacked super teams, making this iteration of the US men's national team and its players a perfect team-up scenario. The squad is, of course, led by the recently named male flag bearer for the US in the opening ceremony, LeBron James, who has famously led the United States to not one, but 2 bronze medals throughout the course of his storied international playing career before Kobe Bryant rode in on his white horse to save the entire United States in 2008. It remains unclear at this time if LeBron plans to kneel on his march with the flag during said opening ceremony or not. And the news comes coincidentally as the Americans just concluded their pre-pool play tune-up with an exhilarating 4-point win over the Germans behind LeBron's team-high 20 points, which included the last 11 points of the game for the US. Bron, meanwhile, in quintessential Bron fashion, was predictably celebrating as if this was the gold medal game instead of an actual scrimmage that the Americans should have won handily. Not a surprise in the least for the guy and a fan base who pretend like finals appearances is a thing. This team, however, for some reason, is being dubbed as one that could arguably rival the original Dream Team in '92. A team boasting a roster of the actual GOAT, Michael Jordan, 2 additional top 6 players of all time in Magic Johnson and Larry Bird, along with the 3rd leading scorer in league history, Karl Malone, the all-time leader in assists and steals, John Stockton, and just a couple other top 50 all-time players like Charles Barkley, Scottie Pippen, and David Robinson. The insinuation that this team could hang within 15 points of that one is peak comedy at its best. And in their penultimate tune-up before heading to pool play in France, the US just escaped a massive scare by South Sudan. And frankly, scare likely doesn't stress the magnitude of it effectively enough, as the US barely avoided the upset and were actually trailing South Sudan by 14 points at halftime, sweating out a last-second miss by Carlik Jones that would have handed the Americans a humiliating loss, holding off the Sudanese squad by a final of just 101-100.
It's a complete crap.
Not to worry though, the Americans looked much better in barely getting by the Germans in their most recent game and final scrimmage, the aforementioned 92-88 final over Germany behind the prematurely celebrating Fraud King. Premature in the sense that the United States should be stomping these teams in these tune-up scrimmages. And this American team, as with every other team since professionals started participating, will be judged solely on their ability to not merely win the gold medal, but to do so in resounding fashion by not losing a single game at any stage of the tournament. And the reported clutch heroics of LeBron in this scrimmage being massively overblown by his adoring media jock sniffers is a stark contrast from the famed blue and white scrimmage in Vegas in advance of the 2008 Olympic Games in Beijing. A game ardent LeBron jock sniffers just try to pretend never happened, when Kobe Bryant and LeBron James, the world's current 2 best players at the time, were separated for a highly competitive battle pitting a grouping of the other NBA's best of the best. And with Kobe's blue team trailing by 1 with under 10 seconds left in the game, LeBron would refuse to guard him as Kobe had cooked the fake king throughout the earlier portions of the second half of that game. Instead, the white team opted for the longer Tayshaun Prince, who promptly got the go-ahead shot iced in his face with 6 seconds left by Bryant. But LeBron's white team would have one more shot at the win, and unlike at the other end, Kobe was unafraid to guard LeBron and his minuscule bag, clamping him down and nearly forcing a travel before LeBron tossed up this ugly-looking potential game winner. Kobe ended the scrimmage with a game-high 26 points for either side and the game-winning shot, while clamping down LeBron defensively, who finished with 18, getting it done on both ends and showing Team USA who the best was. But that outcome would have been totally meaningless if Kobe didn't then go on to get it done when the stakes were at their highest. And in the gold medal game in 2008, with LeBron perpetrating a patented disappearing act in the fourth quarter, scoring just 2 points in the last 6 minutes of a one-possession game against Spain, Kobe would score or assist on 18 of the final 24 points for the Americans to lead them to the gold. And only time will tell if LeBron can parlay these late-game performances in meaningless exhibitions to the games that actually matter. Anything less will be viewed as yet another unequivocal failure in the pitiful international career of LeBron James, who, yes, even at 39, will bear the brunt of the failure if this U.S. team is incapable of winning the gold, of which they are significant favorites. After all, James was, allegedly, voted as the best player on this team by his peers, and again has officially been named as the male flag bearer for the Americans. Now, there are an assortment of other all-time greats coming along for the ride, most notably Steph Curry, who has been lighting it up on the shortened international three-point line. But we also have Kevin Durant, if of course he can get healthy enough to participate, along with his teammate in the NBA, Devin Booker, who together on the Suns this season won a grand total of 0 total playoff games. Also assembling will be league MVP from 2 years ago, Joel Embiid, who has never played even 70 games for a single time in his entire 10-year NBA career, but is going to limp his ass around the court for this American squad. We have transcendent, young and up-and-comer Anthony Edwards, who exploded on the scene in these most recent playoffs. Oh, and speaking of the playoffs, the Americans also have basically every key contributor on the Boston Celtics' recent championship roster, except of course for the Eastern Conference Finals MVP and NBA Finals MVP Jaylen Brown, because, well, Nike. Let's see here, am I missing anyone of note? Yes, of course we got AD, elite two-way player and the only guy in the entire NBA to make an All-NBA team and defensive team this last season, who along with the best player on this US team has managed 2 total playoff series wins since 2020. Yeah, this team sure does smell like a heavy favorite. But in a world where the best 5 players currently aren't Americans, perhaps this team could be a slightly more vulnerable than many think. The Canadians look formidable with a backcourt comprised of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Jamal Murray. And if it's front courts you're interested in, look no further than host country France, which will run out reigning Defensive Player of the Year Rudy Gobert, along with Victor Wembanyama, who will be flanked by a couple of NBA regulars in Nicolas Batum and Frank Ntilikina. Though France admittedly has looked like heinous ass in their scrimmage games as of late, losers of their last 4 straight now. But quite frankly, The US, if they are to fail, seems more likely to get caught by one of the non-contenders. For your reference, please see South Sudan, who the US was favored by 43.5 points against in that game, in which the Americans needed this offensive foul, layup by LeBron to escape with a 1-point victory. This team is a team, by and large, lacking a single alpha-minded player, just a bunch of front-runners who need ideal conditions for success. Perhaps, with such an overwhelming discrepancy in overall roster talent and depth, they will never have to face adversity. But if they do, chances are high that this team will crumble in hilarious and pathetic ways never before seen in international history, except for, well, you know.